The dust has finally settled. After 9 rounds of gruesome Swiss, we have our top 8. Congratulations to all the competitors. If you're just tuning in, my name is Anurag Das, and I'm here with Drake Sasser, getting into the top 8 of the modern 10K trial here in Lansing, Michigan. First things first, hit that follow button, show the channel your support. Thank you to the cast Norman Cohen. Thank you to Max Khan. Thank you to Matt Bamonte for bringing this live production of Paper Modern Magic. I'm so excited to see, the conclusion of this this day-long tournament. As a reminder, everybody, today we're only going to be covering the first round of the top 8. The quarters are today. Semis and finals will be tomorrow. Let's take a look at the bracket and see who's doing how well. And here it is. So we've seen a lot of these names already. Jesse Robkin, first seed here, 4-color Blink, playing against Max Hirsch on Azorius Hammer. Nathaniel Wilson, Mono Green Tron, a deck that we haven't seen yet today, against Zach Allen on 4-color Blink, who just won their last round in the win and in. Daniel Wharton on Izzet Murktide against Josh Warsaw on 4-color Blink. And the match that we will be watching first, Nicholas Bradley on Izzet Murktide against Sam Kuprewicz on Living End. So let's take a look at the prizes too, just to see what the players are competing for. There's a lot on the line here. First place has the alluring $2,400 prize, but more importantly, there's 30 points to first. And these points, they matter. They matter in the year-long, season-long race for that top leaderboard slot. Qualify yourself for the NRG Series Championship event later in the year. It's going to be great. We need to, get into the match here. I'm excited to see how the players are going to be doing, what they're playing. And the matchup, I believe, is going to be Izzet Murktide against Living End. Do you have any insights into this? The 3 seed versus the 6 seed. Looks like Izzet Murktide will be on the play.
Yeah, so this is actually a matchup where Murktide, believe it or not, is kind of behind in the main deck games. You wouldn't think so, but it's kind of asking a lot for the Murktide deck to get the right mix of counterspells plus mana plus threats on a timeline that is aggressive enough to outrace a Living End. And that's kind of weird to think about, but when the games play out, like Living End can pick their spots really well against the Murktide deck because the threats traditionally cost quite a bit of mana, so they can wait until a threat is deployed and then go for a Living End, maybe on end step, untap, and go for a Living End again if it gets countered. Force of Negation adds to the mix. Like, the Living End deck is just a little bit more efficient in the main deck games, so a lot of times the Murktide deck is packing a lot of hate in the sideboard games. Now, we'll see with Nicholas Bradley on the play. We'll see if that's enough to give him, enough of a time edge in order to get ahead in this matchup. But in general, on paper, I think Living End's a little bit ahead here.
Very interesting assessment there. We're going to see Living End take a mulligan. Sam going down to 6 cards at least here. This is interesting because, on the play, how do you factor cards like Ragavan? How do you factor cards like Dragon's Rage Channeler? I mean, Ragavan generating that massive mana advantage early. It's not like the Living End deck is known for having a plethora of removal spells like we've seen in the 4-color variants throughout the day. Sam going down to 5 here.
I think Living End takes the Tron approach when it comes to Ragavan, and that is to say, you can hit me with Ragavan, but you're not casting any of my cards. My cards are either a billion mana or just kind of bad. So, you're not casting anything. So the mana advantage is still big for Ragavan, but when there's not that potential to have this game-ending snowball right out the gate on turn 1, it does a lot to alleviate the problems. And even if you do start casting some things from Living End, they don't really care. What are you going to do? Cast one of their creatures? Okay, Living End, put that in the graveyard. I just don't care. So it really is, Ragavan is not as critical in this matchup as it is in something like the 4-color matchup, even though it does help with being a threat and with, obviously generating mana.
Okay, yeah, very good point here. So I think in order to convert with the Ragavan, what you're saying then is that there has to be the duo, like whether it is Counterspell, whether it is Archmage's Charm, whether it is, Murktide Regent, for example. Those are all the cards that you want to pair alongside something aggressive to make it actually count. That's a really interesting observation that, Ragavan actually not so great in this matchup. Let's see if there actually is one on turn 1 and if it actually ends up doing anything.
I agree. And both players do know the matchup. We do see the keep from Sam includes a Violent Outburst, a Force Negation, some blue cards, and some lands. This is what I'm talking about. This is a really good hand for Sam in this matchup, despite Nicholas leading on a pretty good turn 1 threat. It's only a 1/1, not going to do a lot of damage very quickly. Sam is going to be able to instant speed the Violent Outburst on turn 3 and then answer all of the Murktide threats with Force Negation backup. And that's exactly the mix Sam is looking for. And it's a lot easier for Sam's deck to assemble that than it is for the Murktide deck to consistently assemble all the mixture they need. Now, we do see a counter spell and a second land in Nicholas's hand. That's a good start. But really, like I said, the cards that you really kind of want is you need like a counterspell and a spell pierce kind of, because you need to be ready for the force negations. The deck plays 4, and they're really important in the matchup, especially if the Living End deck knows that this is the Murktide matchup.
Yep. The silver lining here, though, is that, Sam is on a mulligan to 5, and it seems really hard to have, the interaction that you're talking about, but also the Cascade itself, but also the lands, but then also enough your creatures to cycle into the graveyard. So we'll see what Sam is going to have. Looks like here on the end step, we might be cycling maybe a Riverwinder, perhaps.
So an interesting pickup from Nicholas was a second copy of Counterspell. Now, if Sam is experiencing this matchup, what he should do is upkeep the Violent Outburst before the 4th land drop can come down and represent double Counterspell. That is when you want to pull the trigger on your Violent Outburst and have your Force Negation ready to go. There's some other extenuating circumstances that can happen, but for the most part, that's kind of the timing you want. And with Nicholas having a second copy of Counterspell in hand, we could run into an issue where Sam's like, okay, end step, I'm going to cast my whatever. That way I don't get Murktided. And then suddenly, there's double Counterspell and the entire thing falls apart. But, a second copy of a Living End effect can also change that math. There's a lot more going on, but I think it's just interesting to call out the way that we're going to see players handle their untapped mana this game.
All right, cycling the Sphinx here. Dragon Raise Channel are going to enter the red zone. Sam at 15, not too bad, not too bad. 2 mana in play. We still need a third, and like you mentioned, the Violent Outburst there at the ready. Only 1 creature in the graveyard means that I'm not super stoked about casting or resolving the Living End just yet. We're gonna have to hit a little bit more Waker of Waves here, going to help with that.
It looks like a land and a creature may be among the mix. I think I'm pretty interested in getting rid of the creature. Definitely want to enable a Living End. Looks like a fetch land does mean that we're not messed up by colors when it comes to that forest. So it looks like Sam thinks otherwise. Spirebluff Canal, the pickup.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think Sam's hand is actually kind of light on blue cards. You want to be able to cast Violent Outburst with the Force of Negation backup. And in this situation, it doesn't seem particularly likely. I mean, if you are able to maybe...
Well, here's 4 mana. That's double Counterspell mana. Here's an attack. Yeah, exactly. If you're going to cast this Violent Outburst anyway, why not do it on upkeep, right? Like, why do you need to see what's going into combat? And now there's a Living End. That's going to get counterspelled. Then he's going to force, and then that's going to get counterspelled again. So it's kind of one of those spots where that 4th mana is actually worth a lot from the Murktide deck. And we're going to go ahead and let that one happen. And we're going to go and take some damage. No fight with the Force Negation.
Actually.
I mean, maybe it's just bait. Maybe Sam's like, whatever. I don't even care that much about the 2 creatures. I just want to put more creatures in the graveyard and then try to protect it. Because we do see, I think, an Architects of Will, at least one among the mix. I don't know.
I think I like this as well. I wouldn't really try to fight over this, mostly because, well, I know it's very resource intensive. You're already on a mulligan of 5. Wait, am I mistaken? Is there
too? Yeah, I didn't even see a force. I thought I saw a force in the opening hand, but
I could have sworn I saw one as well, but maybe not.
Either way, it looks like there's a lot of cycler creatures either way. So no matter what, Sam's hand is going to change in context a lot over the next turn cycle or 2.
Oh, I love this play.
Oh, yeah. Let's just cast this 4/4. That blocks. Hello.
Feels kind of bad to have to counterspell.
Oh, what a counterspell! You have to counterspell the 4/4 because it just gets in the way, and now the next Living End is very likely to work.
That's great. That specific sequence worked out so well for Sam, but it's still kind of tricky because we need an enabler. Architect in the hand can cycle. Maybe if it's the top card of the deck, or
there's an Architect off the top. That one could be played by Nicholas. This is actually cool. You should play the Architects here because you can actually cast it and then delay the Living End for a turn if there is one on top. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and read this card. I think you're pretty interested in casting this.
Yeah, the Architect actually does have a triggered ability when it ETBs that is very, very relevant. And you can see that, generally speaking, the way it works is you want to use that trigger to guarantee when you resolve your Living End that your opponent's not going to top deck anything crazy. Getting to look at the top 3 cards of the library and manipulate however you want. We'll see here if Nicholas is going to cast the Architect. Looks like instead we're going to go for a giant dragon, maybe?
I like this. If there's a bounce spell off the top for Sam, this might represent, not like a bounce spell, I'm sorry, like a channel or like a petty theft, any kind of like bounce effect that could potentially save Sam another turn. Maybe adding another threat to the mix gives you a kill. Looks like we could Architects of Our Own. Gonna go ahead and cycle that. Looks like, is that Subtlety? Otawara? Looks like one of those effects.
I believe it's a Subtlety, which is not what we want. And we did actually end up drawing a copy of Living End, which is also somewhat unfortunate. So we're going to see here now if there are any outs here. I believe close to being dead on board here.
Well, I referenced Izzet Murktide being pretty behind in the matchup. I still think that's the case, but the mix that they need is threats, counterspells, and lands, and Nicholas had no shortage of all three of those things here in game one. So an impressive showing from Nicholas Bradley, an impressive understanding of the matchup. I mean, it seems like it would be obvious, right? Like, oh yeah, counterspells are good in the matchup, threats are good in the matchup, but I don't think it always necessarily registers to players that it means you can't keep on edge hands. You can't even keep hands that have like only two of the pieces. You really need a convincingly good hand in order to fire it all up. Nicholas, like I said, had that, was able to convert the victory, and overall some impressive stuff, I think, from Nicholas in game number one.
Yeah, the Living End deck is extremely interactive. So like you mentioned, just having one or two pieces of defense might not even be enough here. We've seen, lots of griefs. We've seen in the sideboard copies of cards like Mystical Dispute, Subtlety, etc., and so on and so forth. I'm kind of curious to see what is in the sideboards here. Keeping in mind that now that we're in the top 8, this is open deck list, so players will have, sideboards available. Will have a better idea of how, the post-board games are being approached. Let's get into the Living End list and see what's in the sideboard here. What cards do you like here? I see a couple Foundation Breakers, Subtlety, Disputes, Ley Lines, and Force of Vigor.
Yeah, so I like the Disputes a lot, right? Like, so once you know what's in the sideboard, and like obviously this is actually something that's going to be true for me as well. It's important for me to know, kind of what's in the Murktide deck. Like if there's any copies of Chalice of the Void, if there's any copy of Void Mirror, you're going to want access to some of those Foundation Breakers. But for the most part, those Disputes are the most attractive thing, in my opinion, by a lot. You want to be able to fight the counter spells, the Archmage's Charms. There's going to be Flusterstorms coming in. There's going to be, Spell Pierces, all that stuff. You need to be able to fight those cards at an efficient rate on top of your forces. They need a little bit of help. Your griefs are good for the same reason. And actually part of that grief equation, you might actually could bring in some Leyline with the Voids. They're not bad if you have them and they're like on your opening hand, and they're not bad if you really draw them because you can pitch them to griefs. Like griefs are oftentimes a part of the equation here, and having like that out to pitch it to something you're actively excited to use, I think actually makes it maybe a little bit. I don't know if I want all three, but especially if you want some number of Foundation Breakers, but a lot of good options based on how Sam wants to approach the matchup here on the play. Speaking
of the matchup, let's take a look at the other side of the matchup. Looking at blue-red Murktide, Izzet Murktide, and the sideboard tools here. 1 Blood Moon, 2 Hearse, Dress Downs, Engineered Explosives, Disputes and Flusterstorms, 1 Jace the Mind Sculptor, Subtlety, and Magus of the Moon. What do you like here?
Well, obviously, the Hearses are the new tech. There's no Void Mirrors, no Chalices. We're going to just try to use that card and hope it's good enough. Now, they're not really great when drawn late, but they're still pretty good, obviously. So maybe, like I said, maybe you want a couple Foundation Breakers from the Living End deck for those. But otherwise, like I said, the Flusterstorms, really good. The Disputes are actually pretty good too, because a lot of times you end up fighting over a Living End. So they are going to convert, even if they don't counter the namesake Living End card themselves. But for the most part, you want to reach for the counter spells, you want to reach for the Hearses. And other, it's pretty scripted sideboarding. A lot of the spot removal is really, really bad. So you have a lot of cards to get out.
Okay, yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Assuming both players keep 7 cards in our first post-board game of the top 8, who do you think turns out ahead? Now, keep in mind, this time around, we have Sam Living End on the play. Is that enough to pull ahead?
I think Living End will still be a little ahead. For the most part, I think it shores up a lot. Like I said, the Murktide deck you saw had like 2 or 3 Flusterstorms, some Disputes, and Hearses. That's like 6 or 7 cards. It's almost half your sideboard you can bring in. So they are very much prepared for this matchup. And I think that shores up a lot. Now, the Living End deck does have a lot of generic answers too. And depending on the texture of opening hands, I think what matters more, you said, if both players keep 7, I think the Living End deck's ahead. But I think the Living End deck is a lot more likely to mulligan for a more functional hand. Whereas the Murktide deck post-sideboard, it's a lot easier to assemble the mix of counterspells, lands, and threats you want because there's a lot more of each thing.
All right. Well, both players are going to keep 7 cards here. Turn 1 land pass from the Living End side of things. Nicholas Bradley on blue-red Murktide going to play a Ragavan. Probably one of your better
Ragavan's
starts.
still good on turn 1. Like I said, the hits from Ragavan don't necessarily turn into that huge snowball we see in other matchups, but we did see in game number 1, it's still very potent. The mana advantage still matters. It's just not as brutal as it is, and we've seen some other matchups where there's planeswalkers and things you can hit off of it.
Yeah, absolutely here. And I mean, the mana also does matter, you know, being able to ramp as aggressively as possible allows you to play, tap out for threats, hold up counterspell in the meantime. So it's not like it's nothing. It's just not as good as it is in other matchups for sure.
Precisely. And it looks like there might be a Dragon's Rage Channeler among the mix. Flusterstorm also among the mix. Honestly, given the texture of Nicholas Bradley's hand, I actually like his spot a lot right now. Of course, you know, Living End is very well known for just kind of dirtling around, cycling some cards, and then suddenly winning out of nowhere. But you know, seeing Flusterstorm is like one of the best possible cyber cards you can have. Force of Negation does not do a very good job fighting against that because it does take multiple counter spells and it does require a lot of extra mana. So Flusterstorm, one of the best possible cards you can have from the Murktide deck in this matchup. So Sam's going to need quite a sequence here. Some things, some griefs, some forces, and some living ends and some creatures. The right mix of stuff. So we'll see exactly how that plays out and how much the mana advantage from Ragavan is going to swing this game.
Yeah, I see a copy of Dragon's Rage Channeler in the Murktide hand, and I wonder if we have enough interaction to just not even need to play that card. Okay, no, looks like we're going to deploy here, which is I like this. I like getting a little bit aggressive here. I mean, we still have a couple answers, like you mentioned, Flusterstorm. Flusterstorm seems particularly good in this matchup, just because if you tap out on turn 3 for your Cascade spell, the Storm count works in such a way where you can't actually just spend one counter to get rid of the Flusterstorm. You actually have to get rid of each individual copy and the original copy itself. So that's very, very complex to deal with. And I don't think we would ever expect to see Flusterstorm of Sam's own because it just doesn't work with the Cascade mechanic.
Correct. That is an accurate assessment of what is going on. Looks like a lot of Street Wraiths here, which, you know, normally pretty good, but life total actually kind of matters a lot in this matchup. It looks like there's a third one among the bunch as well. Wonder how interested Sam is in cycling that one now. Looks like a Waker of Waves among the mix. That one does provide a little bit of selection. A huge pickup for the Living End deck, being able to get a little bit more than just blind cycles. I think played a huge part in, you know, catapulting the deck into the dominance it has now. As here's an in-step Consider. Now, as soon as, you know, Living End's passing with 3 mana, you have to have the Living End at instant speed on your radar. So maybe a little bit of a show of strength. If you're Sam and, you know, your opponent taps off counterspell on instep where, you know, a Living End for a pretty sizable Living End could happen, you have to have something big on their radar. Some 1 mana piece of interaction, right?
It looks like a duplicate Ragavan is the draw for the turn. That is not exactly where you want to be, but see, Lightning Bolt as well in the hand here. Crash in for, I believe, 3 points of damage. I don't see a sorcery in the graveyard. I see instant land. I believe that is a Murktide Regent.
Yeah, we got creature 2. And that's about it. Here's an in-step cycle of the Wakers. Yeah, you're very much right. We do not have Delirium yet, but a big part of playing the Dragon's Rage Channeler is assembling a faster clock. And wow, quite telling that this Force of Negation is going to the graveyard.
Yeah, that's not a good sign. You know, if Force of Negation is going into the graveyard, I feel like
I'd be pretty scared if I was Nicholas. Like, oh, what is about to happen to me? It looks like a Grief is among the mix. There's a Grief and a Force of Negation already in hand. As here comes the namesake Grief. Flusterstorm among the mix. Now, there's a lot of work to do. If Sam's not deploying anything else, has 4 mana, you have to imagine there's a lot of problems. How about 2 copies of Flusterstorm?
Oh, my goodness.
That's all you have to beat, but that's a lot to beat.
And given the pressure that's already in play, that is actually kind of an insurmountable amount of interaction, right? Because for Flusterstorm, to counter Flusterstorm, what you need is, well, the Cascade spell, like, you know, Violent Outburst or Shardless Agent. That's 1 mana you need for that. And then the Cascade spell itself, you need 2nd mana. And then Flusterstorm. So there's 3 copies of Flusterstorm that'll be on the stack entirely. You need 3 mana. So that's a total of 6 that you need to get through one of the Flusterstorms. And that's not happening in this game. I mean, you know, with the Ragavan and with the Dragon's Rage Channeler in play, this game is going to be over far sooner.
I like this a lot. Jam it anyway. Make them use the Flusterstorm, and then you still have a body to block Ragavan. That does a lot to stifle the aggression. There's still no sorcery in the graveyard. So here comes the Living End. Going to take a look at the revealed cards. Yeah, not too worried about what's going on there, it looks like. Why are we writing the... Okay. I guess there's Foundation Breakers. You want to write down that those were sideboarded in, I think.
Agree. Good to know. Yeah, good to know about this. Also, I mean, like when you're playing the top 8 and you have time to think and use commit all your mental energy. I like this. It's just a little bit of dedication.
Yeah, it was just
devotion
interesting to me
there.
knowing that they have open deck lists. I was like, what kind of information are you learning?
Oh, okay,
The
okay, yeah.
sideboarding is what matters.
Sideboarding notes. Yeah, I think that's the big ticket item there. And so we're gonna see Flusterstorm, all copies most likely on the living end here. Yeah,
Yeah,
Grief.
can't let that happen. But this functioning is another copy of Grief, basically, right? Like it takes a living end out of your deck, but for the most part, you're just you know the Flusterstorm's there. Just run your Shardless Agent into it and hope to draw another effect, and that's the way you got to do it. And here's an in-step Lightning Bolt that's going to take care of the Shardless Agent and allow the Ragavan to keep attacking uncontested. Nicholas does not find a sorcery, quickly bins a Spirebluff Canal, the mana from Ragavan, allowing Nicholas to just bin lands aggressively. And Mystical Dispute, the pickup, that one's going to be worth a lot. Just cast for 3 mana on the next copy of Living End. Now, there is a Force Negation. So if it's Violent Outburst, maybe we're still in a little bit of trouble. But Murktide Regent is not going to give Sam a lot of time to find that Violent Outburst.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting, right? Because I'm pretty sure shields are somewhat down here for Nicholas Bradley outside of the Mystical Dispute that you're talking about. But being able to hard cast, or when I say hard cast, I mean like for spending the full cost on Mystical Dispute, the 2 and a blue, that is a realistic thing that you could do, and that is only realistically possible thanks to the mana generation from Ragavan.
No, you're very much right. Ragavan, we mentioned how it's not that potent. Shardless Agent off the top is exactly what Sam was looking for. Not quite very good maybe for the Cascade deck, but you could try it. I don't know. I think you're more interested in playing Murktide Regent and holding up the Mystical Dispute, but it is fun to toy around with the idea of casting a Shardless Agent here.
Yeah, it's a little bit annoying because I think that's exactly the card that Sam was hoping to draw into.
Correct.
The fact that it's just going to be exiled for no value is I feel it. I feel it.
It adds to the tilt factor of Ragavan, I think.
Oh yeah.
It's like I wanted
this
to
card's
draw that.
Your best card's not even good enough for my deck.
Yeah, I don't need that trash. And land is the pickup. There's an Otawara in hand that can take care of the Murktide Regent. But Sam's still not on a lot of time despite that. And looks like a Spell Pierce the pickup. I'll channel this Otawara, please. There you go. You can have that Murktide back. Thank you very much. You can go ahead and take a look at that one. Channel 3 and a blue. Discard it. Return to artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Kind of going back to listing out the types like they used to do back in the day instead of saying non-land permanent. What's going on with that?
I don't know. I quite like it. I think it's good because in the same set too, you had like March of Otherworldly Light, for example, which doesn't get rid of planeswalkers. So like probably have to specify, nuances, differences here and there.
Yeah, it picks up enchantment lands or something, I guess. Like a Urza Saga or whatever.
Okay, mid-combat,
Consider maybe trying to reassemble. Yeah, we're trying to reassemble Delirium. Gonna hit land. Well, you know what? As much as you hated to see the Shardless going away, you have to be somewhat happy to see the Botanical Sanctum leaving the top of the library, as Sam is out of Cyclers. We'll see what Nicholas decides to do. We do not have a lethal attack on board quite yet.
But between Expressive Iteration, Murktide Regent, all these very, very powerful cards, it doesn't even seem like... It seems like Sam is, like, very behind. Like, this, it has to be... I don't think we're quite in the Demonic Tutor Challenge area just yet.
You like the Demonic Tutor game?
Yeah, okay. So see, I had to explain this to Devin earlier today, but I'm glad that you know. So basically, for anyone who doesn't know, the Demonic Tutor Challenge is something you give to your opponent when you're so far ahead in the game, the match, or whatever it is, and you tell your opponent, hey, you can draw any card from your deck and you'll still lose. And you're going to see here, yeah, Sam
Mystical
takes a draw.
Dispute, yeah, it's not going to get it done. And with Sam being at 4, that's all she wrote, and that's going to do it. Sam, I mentioned that Murktide behind, in this matchup, and Sam didn't even win a game over Nicholas there, and Murktide
a little bit tricky for sure. Yeah. I mean, Nicholas was 702, now still undefeated in the entire tournament with 2 IDs to make the top 8. Very strong showing there, and I think there's a lot of discipline too in the way Nicholas played, which is really what I enjoyed seeing. For example, I was like, "Oh, you flipped over the Shardless Agent. We were just instantly cast this and take our value," but Nicholas was like, "Wait a minute, no, slow down. I might just pass the turn here and hold up my interaction. I have enough pressure. I have a Murktide Regent that I can also deploy. A lot of like nuances and understanding what actually matters in the specific situations and scenarios that we're in. So all in all, I was pretty impressed with Nicholas's play, and I can definitely understand how we got to the 8-0 position in the tournament. 2 more wins. And yeah, that we could crown a champion potentially. Those matches will be tomorrow. I'm gonna ask production if we have a backup match real quick or not. We do. Okay. All right. Good news. Backup match is live and ready to go. They're shuffling up for game 2. We're going to get an update on the stats here and who actually is playing. Pretty exciting stuff here as we have one of our semifinalists already determined for the night. This is most likely our last match of the night. So buckle in. Hope you are, munching away at that popcorn. We've got Luke Fuller, who we saw.
Is this a rematch?
Might be.
This was the potential win.
Yeah, so the records here indicate we'll get that clarified in short order here.
Yeah, I think Luke Fuller was not 7-1, so I have to imagine the left is probably not accurate. But either way, Zach Allen appears to be our player on the right. I know that man everywhere. He has very distinct demeanor about him when he's playing his control strategies.
Maybe this is the mono green matchup. I believe that's who Zach was playing against in the top 8.
That sounds right. Yeah, it's the Tron deck. All right, so we got the matchup is 4-color Blink versus Tron, and Zach up a game. What do you think of this matchup? I can't say I have a lot of insights here.
I'm not gonna lie. Tron is an archetype that I definitely try to stay away from. However,
Same.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky here. So let's see.
Imagine things like prismatic endings being able to tag expedition maps is an important interaction for Zach Allen. I also imagine that if the game goes really long, that favors the Tron strategy. So my guess is that Zach is the beatdown, and Boseiju is an important part of the equation.
I'm trying to see the matchups that Mono Green Tron had today. It looks like a victory against Azorius Hammer, a round 2 draw actually against Esper Reanimator.
I wonder if that was something that the Tron deck's excited about, being able to get paired against more and more of the 4-color control decks through the draw bracket or whatever. Maybe that's something that the Tron deck's actually just like excited about.
Do you want to know how many times Nathaniel played against 4-color today?
Number of times. All right. Is this like a over-under kind of thing?
Yeah. I'll give you the over-under. Let's make this hard. 3 point.
Okay, what you got? 3 point what?
3.5. Over-under on that.
Over.
Yeah, it was four times today. Almost half.
Holy cow.
That's crazy, right?
That's a lot. So Nathaniel has to be pretty intimately familiar with the matchup at this point, I have to imagine.
Yeah, you want to know the crazier part?
Well, what?
Dropped only 1 game.
1 game?
The 1 game against the 4-color deck. So
this is the second game that Nathaniel has lost a 4-color with Tron. Maybe that means we're all sleeping on Tron. If there's Omnath and 4-color everywhere, Tron may be the key. Nathaniel might have figured it out. We have to get through Zach Allen and prove it first.
Yeah, this is quite spicy. I mean, yeah, Zach Allen, and also I will say there are players that are very good that I'm not necessarily like afraid to play against. Zach Allen is not one of those players. He's a player who's very good that I'm absolutely like shaking in my boots to play against. Now, Zach Allen, very much in contention. We saw on the leaderboard, Zach Allen is highly ranked up there. This match win could be what catapults Zach into, first place contention for the at-large slot, for the NRG series here. So
absolutely. The race is extremely tight, even right now among the top of the leaderboard. Zach Allen sitting at 7th place with 58 points. So, this top 8 means a lot. Each match win in the top 8 is worth a whole lot more. So we're see. This is a big tournament for Zach Allen. He's had an incredible streak so far at the NRG series. And, there's a lot of other good players that are not far behind him despite these impressive results. So we'll see if Zach Allen can get it done here. Up a game against Tron, extremely impressive. especially given the accolades that Nathaniel Wilson has against 4-color in this tournament alone. And Nathaniel Wilson showing his prowess as a Tron player by mulliganing aggressively. I don't know what we're on now, but I think this is at least the second mulligan that we have watched. And Tron, notably a deck that can mulligan extremely low and still win games. And Nathaniel looking to maybe reach once more for the deck.
You want me to add some spice to the soup that we've got going on right now? I'm going to do it.
You love spice and soup. What you got?
One of the 4-color decks that Nathaniel beat on the way to the top 8 actually was Zach Allen. So this is a grudge match through and through.
Well, this is a rematch. It was just not the rematch we originally thought. Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So imagine
now all the information's face up. Both players know every card in every list, and we're gonna see if that changes anything as far as the match result. Zach Allen was on the draw in game 1 as well, so kind of an interesting thing to consider. Like I said, I have to imagine one of the most important things that you wouldn't normally mulligan for or whatever has to be like Boseiju or Boseiju plus Ren and 6, right? Yeah. That has to be a huge combination against the Tron deck as you can begin to really blow up all their lands. Usually they're only on like 3 forests-ish these days. We can get an exact look at what the deck lists look like in top 8, see how many forests there actually are. But I imagine actually locking your Tron opponent out of lands, it's 3 forests, is very possible with Boseiju Who Endures, a big pickup from Neon Dynasty.
Yeah, this is crazy. I think now we're actually down to 4 cards here. And you said that Tron has the potential to mulligan very well. How about a mulligan to 4? How do you feel about that?
It's not impossible. You need help, but it's not impossible. When 3 lands equals 7 mana, it's not impossible. And that looked like a head in hands moment. So
this does not look like a good hand at all.
Yeah.
I see Ancient Stirring. I see Forest. I see Wormcoil, Thragtusk. I don't really see a second land here. I would, as much as it sucks to say, I would. Here's what I would do. You ready? Here's my winning strategy. I would mulligan down to 3 and hit natural Tron straight up.
Okay, that's something you could do. I mean, there's stories all over the place about that. It's like I just kept 3 Tron lands. I drew a ham sandwich that cost a lot of mana, and I won the game.
Yeah, that's a great plan. I like that.
And or maybe a lot of cards go to the bottom of the library.
Maybe this is the mulligan to 3. Oh no. Okay.
Oh no. Okay. Turn 1. Signed Snow-Covered Forest into signed Ancient Stirrings. Looks like a bunch of Tron lands. Hey, what? I'll take that hand. I'll keep those cards.
Yeah. Judge, can we redo? Is that an option here?
I'll take this mulligan, please. Looks like Urza's Power Plant to pick up. Zach Allen leading on an Abundant Growth. Looks like Zach maybe on a low mulligan as well. Not a ton of cards in Zach Allen's hand, especially for being on the draw. Here's a second copy of Ancient Stirrings. This one's probably looking for a different Tron piece.
This is not the worst, I mean,
find
Stirrings
none of them. Well, we found a star. Impressive Tron deck here. Here comes a Urza's Power Plant and a Chromatic Star. The pickup appears to be a Spar's Headquarters, I think, for Zach Allen. A lot of tap lands and Eladamri's Call. If the Eladamri's Call can grab a Magus of the Moon, I have to imagine that's going to be a pretty big game winner for Zach Allen, especially with Nathan on solo resources. I'm going to go ahead and cycle the star. Looks like no land at all to play. Maybe another star to cycle. No, it's a scrying, I think. No, wow, it's a ballista. Okay. Yeah, we're going to be missing land drops. And now, do you even grab the Magus of the Moon? Like, we're so far from having Tron. Is it even worth doing?
I believe Zach also has access to what is it called? Obsidian Charma. And I need to double check
Obsidian Charma
on that. Yeah, that one seems like a pretty nasty one to pick up as well. It's 5 mana for their full retail cost, but it does have cost reduction imbued in it. And that is especially good against the Tron land. So for anyone who does not know, Obsidian Charma is 3 red for a dragon, a 4/4 dragon with flying. When it ETBs, destroy target non-basic land that opponent controls. And it costs 1 less to cast for each land your opponents control that could produce colorless. And guess what lands are very good?
Here it comes. Yeah. Obsidian Charma, a card we've talked about a little bit today. First time appearance on camera, tutored up with the Eladamri's Call. Still a little bit away. That card costs 4 right now. But With Zach Allen making his 3rd land drop and Nathaniel missing his land drop, it seems like Charma not as far away as it looks. Now, that Stomping Ground that was fetched does make that draw and counterspell look a little weird, but once again, Zach not under much pressure to actually have to counterspells as Nathaniel's hand fills up with cards that cost more than 2 mana. And
yeah, and this is so painful because Eladamri's call here for Obsidian Charma kind of puts Nathaniel in this double bind where if you play more lands like we're seeing here, well, that's cost reduction on the Charma. So now the Charma will definitely come down this turn, right? And if you don't, well, you just kind of you're stuck on 2 lands. So
yeah,
it's
you're
a
just
lose-lose situation.
That's not good. No, you're very much right. And the Charma itself representing a threat. Yep. Okay, here you go. I'll cast this one. Which one do you blow up? What's the metagame? You blow up the power plant? The power's the whole operation.
I'm definitely behind on the metagame for there as well. So I trust your decision.
I think there's
here.
some reason to blow up tower because actually no, I think you're supposed to blow up the non-tower one because you don't want tower to be their last Tron piece because that gives them the most mana. I don't know. There's some logic behind it, but I think you're actually supposed
smart.
To
Yeah, that sounded very smart.
Either way, I don't think it's going to matter too much as here comes the Wrenn and 6. Now, Nathaniel did draw a Sylvan Scrying. That was a big draw step to redeploy a Urza's Tower. Once again, only 1 piece away now as the Obsidian Charmal is going to crunch in for 4 damage. Now, Zach finds something like an Ephemerate for this Charmal. Things get really ugly really fast. And looks like maybe another Sylvan Scrying assembled.
Wow.
Zach does have Counterspell. Absolutely not, says Zach Allen. Go ahead and pass the turn back.
Mulligan to 3, still assembled Tron by turn 4. What the? Maybe turn 5. I think we missed a land drop somewhere, but still, that's kind of terrifying. I mean,
Nathan had plays off of it too. If he went and grabbed a Tron land there, and that's 5 mana, he could have played Karn plus something else. Who knows what how the game actually shapes up if that resolves. So, I mean, an impressive showing from Tron. This is what we're talking about. The deck can mulligan well and assemble a bunch of mana on very low resources. And then, after that, it's just kind of trivial. It's what big payoff do you assemble? Omnath, huge draw for Zach Allen. Pick up a fetch land. Probably don't want to play that one quite yet.
Millions 1, 2, 3. Can we actually Yorion this turn as well? Might be 1 mana off.
Right. That costs 8 mana. So I think we only have 7.
Right. And that is quite intimidating actually because we're missing out on land drops again. So if we get to blink the Obsidian Charma, that might just be game. I mean, this is already 8 points of power. That's like a 2-turn clock. I mean, I guess the Omnath can't attack, but very, very... Actually, no. Next turn, we would go Yorion. So this is a 2-turn clock, potentially, yeah.
Yeah. The nightmare here, too, would be anything like a Teferi also threatens to pick up the Charmaw. And that's why you see 1 Charmaw is more than enough. You just find the 1 and you play it a lot of times, and then the lands go away.
I retract my earlier statement. Yorion would be summoning sick. Combat math is not this blue mage's specialty. I'll tell you that much.
That's all right. I think the Yorion would be more than enough with the blinking the Charmaw alone. I think you're still accurate that it would be game over. It just doesn't actually matter, about the combat math that much. All right. Now
I think in the hand too, we actually saw a copy of Karn, the Great Creator, as our potential payoff. So maybe the game's not completely over. I mean, exactly this turn, if we draw into the last piece, we can play the Karn, tick down, and then maybe find something like Ensnaring Bridge to put into play here. But I have to imagine at this point that Zach Allen just does have any sort of answer here.
And what a draw! Expedition map! That's Tron Online! Now, the problem is Yorion's coming down and then you're going to lose the land again. But, this really shows how consistent Tron is as a deck and why it has persisted throughout time as a dominant strategy. And I believe this Icewind Quaddle represents the 9th point of damage, which with 3 Omnath triggers would be lethal. However, we don't have any fetch lands in place. We're going to have to find another point somewhere. Oh, that's Ephemerate. Oh, man. Oh, boy.
Oh, God.
Oh, this is about to get ugly. Please cover the kids' eyes. Yeah, parents, they can't. We can't.
911. I'd like to report a murder. No. Oh, Zach, come on. Nathaniel's got a family at home. This is not okay.
You can't do this to this man.
All right. Now we just,
I think it's time to check Twitch terms of service before we continue to stream this particular match, as it's about to get ugly.
Good stuff here, I suppose. I wonder if there's actually a way to end the game without. I mean, can we put 3 lands into play here somehow?
I don't think so. There's no grazers, there's no dryads. There's no Risen Reefs. The Risen Reef's usually the big way to do it. Now, I think we can just attack for lethal. We don't have to actually do the all the things. This lightning bolts plus 9.
Yeah, 9. Actually, bolt is just straight up lethal, right? There's a bolt in the hand.
Yeah, even the Rend downtick would make up the extra point, right?
Oh, so many ways to do it. Oh, so many
yeah,
ways
you got a lot of ways to do it. So you don't have to sit here and play with your food. You don't have to blow up every single one of your.
You could though. That's kind of sweet. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, I was saying that you don't have to play with your food, but Zach Allen's still just casting expressive iterations and stuff.
Really,
so
just boils down to how much or how little you like Tron. I mean, if you have been burned bad by Tron earlier, you know, maybe, but this is certainly lethal for sure here. What's that song? Still had all these.
Oh, yeah.
That's a throwback, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh, never mind. Zach wants to play with his food. Yeah. I don't even need to attack. I'm just gonna, you know what? Just blow up these lands. I don't combat damage. I don't care. You'll die eventually.
It's pure evil. Pure evil.
Yeah, that's pretty. It's pretty messed up, honestly.
In front of an audience of over 1,000 viewers.
Just not even attacking too. Like Zach Allen. Zach Allen, absolutely not. I don't know. All my permanents go away and come back. I'm gonna blow up another one of your lands. Is this cool or are we? All right, that one too. You know what? That one can go away. I'm gonna draw. What is this? 100 cards? Yeah, sure. Oh, a counter spell. Sure, why not? Another counter spell.
We just drew 4 cards off of that. I mean, okay, now I totally understand how to play it. Like blowing up the land, cool, but drawing 4 cards is a must. This is an
way more cool. Yeah, okay, yeah, way worth it. Way worth it. Got to draw the cards. You have to draw the cards. Ephemerate on top of the library. In case you're thinking putting a land into play, I'm just gonna let you know this Ephemerate's right here. So if you want to go ahead and do that. All right,
we are obligated now to also just Ephemerate the Yorion, blink the whole team.
Oh no, thanks. I'm just gonna we'll blink the Obsidian Charm. Thank you very much. Okay, double counter spell, the hand sandwich.
All right, how kind of you, Zach Allen.
Attack with these. All right, good game. Almost so close to the perfect victory with the forest in the yard as well. But unfortunately, Obsidian Charmall cannot take that one off the table. But Zach Allen will take the victory here in the first round of top 8 here at NRG Lansing, and an important victory, as we mentioned time and time again. Zach Allen, number 7 on our leaderboard, picking up a lot of points in this top 8. So we're going to see some huge leaderboard shifts here in the first event of season 2.
Absolutely. And I'm going to double check. I don't think we have any more matches left. That may have been our last match for the night here, but congratulations to the players in the top 8, and especially to those that have advanced on to the top 4. We know 2 of the decks. We have Blue-Red Murktide, and we also have the 4-color control deck.